mean, I don't know where hyperbitcoinization happens. It's not $70,000 where we are today, right? It's a number greater than 70,000. Let's say that in those $900 trillion of assets, people take 5% of their invested dollars, and they move the 5% to Bitcoin. Well, 5% of 900 trillion is $45 trillion. $45 trillion divided by the supply of Bitcoin, 21 million, is $2.14 million of Bitcoin. So a 5% allocation simply from the existing asset base into Bitcoin potentially gets you to over $2 million of Bitcoin. That's $900 trillion is just that small percentage of people that owns it.
Welcome to the Rose Show podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Today I have Lisa Hough. She is a renowned speaker on everything Bitcoin, especially Bitcoin mining. She has extensive experience in the energy industry. She's at Custodia Bank in strategic relationships, former commodities trader, and Forbes leading women in Bitcoin. So honored to have you here today, Lisa. How you doing?
I'm so well, Rosanna. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the nice intro.
It's all true. So we're so grateful to be speaking with you, and you please enlighten us on Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining and the convergence between energy and Bitcoin, which is so fascinating. On your LinkedIn, you have this tagline that says, Bitcoin fixes most everything. Could you please tell us about that and the meaning behind that?
I can try. I don't like to speak in absolutes. A lot of people in Bitcoin have this tagline, Bitcoin fixes everything. It probably does. I don't like to speak in absolutes. So I think it fixes a lot. Probably most importantly, it's money for the whole world to use. And I think of, just to dive right in, I think of money as a way for us to communicate with, communicate our preferences with anyone who we wish to, talk to, right? If I want to, let's say I make t-shirts and I'm in the United States and I want to sell those t-shirts to someone in some other place. If it's a country with a stable financial system, then it probably works. It's probably a 5 or 6 step process, right? My dollar will eventually land in a Canadian bank account, and eventually over time, maybe it's 30 days or 90 days, or it could be up to a year. The actual, the money will actually settle, right? So money does not settle when we send a wire or something to another entity. It doesn't settle immediately, and it's not final. So, Bitcoin is a way for us to communicate with people all over the world, because there are no intermediaries, taking a little piece of it. And I do understand that, the Visa network does charge a fee. They take on a lot of risk, right? They need to know at the end of the day that they've been paid. They're standing up a lot of infrastructure and security, and presumably, accountants and every function that would be within a corporate entity, so that we can transact, all around the world. People often say, well, I can buy anything I want in Malaysia. I have a Visa card. Well, okay. But there's a lot behind that, and there's a lot of loss in the sense of friction or fees that Bitcoin just simply eliminates. So I love that. Also probably the thing that I really like to convey to is that Bitcoin is the only form of property that can be held by every human on Earth, regardless of property rights. And we would probably imagine, I'm in the United States, you're in the United States, we would imagine that the US has some of the strongest property rights. And I haven't looked probably in 18 months, but maybe 18 months ago when I did look, we were 13th on the list of the worldwide index of strong property rights. So if you picture somebody like North Korea at the bottom of the list, I mean, I would certainly have imagined that the United States would have been first. We are not. And some folks would say that those property rights are declining over time. I certainly feel like in the case of property rights, depending on where you are, what jurisdiction you're in the United States, you may think that you own something, but you continually are taxed, whether that's tax on your house, right? You have property tax on your house. I was speaking to someone the other day who lives in Maine, and this individual pays like $800 a year a tax on his pickup truck. So while he may feel like he owns the pickup truck, he's still paying the government for ownership rights of the pickup truck every year. Like, that to me just makes no sense. But setting all of that aside, there are women in North Korea, Cuba, Iran, all over the world, in the United States probably, who, well, no, sorry, in the United States, definitely, there are people that don't own real world assets because they can't collect enough, in our case, dollars to put together to buy those assets. So lots of people can't buy cars. Most people don't own fine art and other collectibles. Factually, most people don't own equities, right? The equity owners of the world, the asset owners of the world, it's actually a very small percentage of the 8 billion people. So Bitcoin is the only form of property that can be held by every human on earth, regardless of what their town, state, government says. And I love that. I also think, the thing I talk about a lot, and I like to hang around people that talk about this, is, Bitcoin fixes a lot that is, it's the missing link in the energy business to make our assets, which we pull out of the earth, the most productive that they can be. So we hear a lot of the narrative that, Bitcoin stabilizes the grids. Bitcoin allows for energy infrastructure to be, excuse me, incentivized to be built where the incentives are aligned. So instead of it being a government incentive, companies can be, can have an incentive to build because they see demand, and they can put numbers in a spreadsheet and go, wow, okay, I can make this product if it's energy, and I can sell it to a consumer of energy and make money. That seems like that's what always happens, but that's not what's happening. It's not what's happening when people buy a Tesla car. Tesla received incentives, certainly the wind farms, the solar farms, those, and many of the hydrogen projects that are happening. In fact, probably all of the hydrogen and green hydrogen and all of these kind of newfangled, we're going to change the world, make the world green narratives that float. Those all have government incentives, and if it's a government incentive, that means that you and I are paying for it at the end of the day. So Bitcoin fixes that.
Wow. So many things it fixes, almost everything, I like to say. And I'm the same as you. I never speak in absolutes as well. So I love that. Fixes almost everything. Excellent points you made there. And I think it's important that we drive home these points. Money is settled. It takes 2 to 3 days or even longer to be settled. It actually technically is like IOU money. So we need lightning speed transfer of this money, and Bitcoin does that. As you mentioned, you eliminate the intermediaries, and it's peer-to-peer. I mean, it's about time that we had something so technologically advanced that we're able to deal with one another and trade. And money is a bartering service. It's a uniform, universal form of exchanging goods and services, and also an account holds account as well. But I always think of Bitcoin as a global reserve asset potential, because you can connect people from around the world instantaneously through this exchange of Bitcoin. Amazing. And then taxation, another point you brought up, we technically don't own, our property. We have the taxation on it, and of course, maintenance as well. So I know Michael Saylor said there's a separation of property from earth, and that's Bitcoin. So, there's so much to explore here. But I know I want to start with your background, because I have to tell you, you have an energy background, commodities. So you are the one to speak with about Bitcoin and energy. So please tell us how you started. I think it was natural gas trading.
Yeah. First of all, there are a lot of people who know much more than I do about Bitcoin mining and certainly energy broadly. None of us know how our lights come on every day. In the United States, we expect that they do. All around the world, they don't for most people. In fact, I think the number is something like only 40% of the world has 100% access to energy.
Wow.
And most of the world lives in energy poverty. And energy poverty is defined as access to energy less than 4 hours a day.
Oh.
So there's that. My background, I traded natural gas 100 years ago. And I got my start by answering an ad in the Houston Chronicle. Like, we took the paper. I had just graduated from college. I came home, moved in with my parents very temporarily for just a couple of months. And, I was sitting around the kitchen table with my parents and circling things that sounded interesting. I got a job interview at a company called FIBRO Energy. They were the commodities trading desk for Salomon Brothers. I later found out that 400 people applied for that job, and two of us got it. The other guy's name was Toby Sands, and I think that Toby did all of my work for probably the first 3 months or 4 months. He was like a quant type person, and we were analysts. I was analyst on a heavy fuels desk. I can't remember which desk Toby was on, but I worked on the heavy fuels desk, which meant that I supported the guys that traded, physical, heavy, dirty products. So, I took their trade tickets and put them into wasn't actually even a spreadsheet. Forget what our system was, but I helped build our system for, tracking those things, and just, kind of picked up, I would say I picked up things along the way while I was there. But the day before I started that job, I was speaking with a friend who was working at Bank of New York. And my friend said, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Do you know if you're going to be on the commodities desk or an equities desk?" And I said, "I don't even know what either of those are." Right? Like, here I am right out of college. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. So, obviously commodities. And it didn't take me very long to realize that. So at FIBRO, the office space, half of the floor downtown in one of the towers was the trading area, and it was 3/4 of the length of a football field, and it was just rows and rows and rows of desks, and everybody had the same desk, and everybody had the same chair. The differentiating factor was how many computers you had, and whether or not you were subscribed to Bloomberg or, kind of the more technical weather programs that we had access to, that sort of stuff. And I realized that the guys that were sitting next to me in the same chair, like, they weren't really any different than I was. They had all grown up somewhere. They had all gone to college somewhere. Actually, a couple of them hadn't. And I just thought, although I was making $28,000 a year, and I felt like that was all the money in the whole world, I couldn't believe I had gotten out and gotten a job making 28,000. I knew that they made more than I did at the time, and I just thought, I want to be a trader. Like, how do I do that? And anyway, I ended up getting another job working for Enron. I went to work on one of their financial desks. Again, I was in the risk management group. I'm still really good friends with the woman that ran the trading desk. Her name is Jean Beach. I'm trying to get her to come work in Bitcoin. She developed a derivatives product that was hugely useful and widely used by the natural gas trading community. It basically was a derivative which allowed you to mitigate risk, pipeline specific, intra-month, right? So during the month, you could actually adjust what your risk profile looked like on any particular pipeline in the United States. So my sort of vision, so having that experience working with Gene on that derivatives desk, I really do see the need for the derivatives market in Bitcoin, and the derivatives specifically around the hash rate and hash price rate. All of those things that we don't really talk about are necessary so that folks can fine tune their risk and reduce their risk. So that was sort of my start on a trading desk. I was not trading. I did not have any book responsibility. Enron at the time only promoted people that had an MBA. So you could only go sit on a trading desk if you had graduated with an MBA. I did not. I didn't want one. And so that meant I had to leave if I was going to become a trader. So I went to work for a producer, Vastar Resources, and sat on a physical trading desk for Vastar, really learned how and what caused, what supply and demand really looked like, what interruptions on pipelines really look like, whether or not that was hurricane related or, a barge blocks the Houston ship channel and, you've got 40 or 50 barges that are sitting outside the ship channel that need to come in to dock. Like all of those little things. So when you're trading commodities, really what you're doing is you're gathering information in real time, really quickly, and then you're trying to make a market decision based on all of the information that you have. So, often we think about traders and they're looking at charts, and certainly there's that aspect. But when you're trading commodities, there's a whole host of other pieces to the puzzle. And that may also include what the creditworthiness is of your counterpart, right? So every day, the first thing that I would do when I was trading is come in and look at our credit book. And it was, I don't know, 40 pages long or something. And our credit officers would always send an email and say, hey, you can only buy from XYZ company, or you can only, or we really need to sell something to XYZ company, because they were having to post some form of collateral, right, in order to enable trade between counterparties. So, not only did you need to be able to read charts and be able to, kind of have your ear to the ground as to what's going on in your physical area. Traders are broken up by geographic regions, but then you have, a lot of other things to consider. Like I mentioned, the creditworthiness of counterparties and what that might do to the greater market, right? If you know that El Paso, for example, which was a big trading house, if you got rumor that El Paso was, really extended on a deal that they had, or they were really they really had a lot of a bad position on, that's information that you need, right? Because that makes, that could have indicated to you that a counterparty was really vulnerable. And so then how do you go out and incorporate that into your trading strategy? So anyway, I stayed always trading kind of the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. And my last job before I left was working for PG&E Energy Trading. We were based in Washington, D.C., and I ran our East Coast trading desk. So all of our physical and the financial aspects from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up into New England, which was just hugely informational and fascinating and fun, stressful, all wrapped into one. Because a lot of the job, if you're a commodities trader, is arbitraging assets that you have access to. So we had a certain amount of storage capability for natural gas in the Gulf Coast. And we also had like 4,500 megawatts of power. So we had power generation. We had 3 plants on the East Coast. So it's how to balance those and how to get the most, economic value while doing that. So does that mean, taking everything that you have and shipping it north? Does it mean that, maybe the Houston ship channel is blocked and all of a sudden, prices are high in the surrounding area because they need to feed power plants that are down in the Gulf? Maybe you had gas that was on the way to the East Coast and you back it off and you keep it in the Gulf Coast. So anyway, it was fun. All that to say nothing other than it was a great job, a lot of stress, high pay, low hours, tons of stress. First thing I did every single day was flip on the Weather Channel and start to read the weather news. That was the leading indicator of where price was going.
Well,
so,
wow.
To kind of just expand, and we can go in any direction you want, but watching Bitcoin mining really impact the traditional energy space, I think, is the most fascinating topic on earth. I think Bitcoin is the most fascinating topic, but the connection to energy worldwide and what this does for us worldwide, I just think is very hopeful, right? If we can build out more energy infrastructure with less cost to taxpayers, more benefit to the majority of people that live in energy poverty, like, it's really hopeful.
Absolutely. Hope for the future. I find the convergence of Bitcoin energy fascinating as well. You mentioned excellent points. I mean, it seems very complex, the commodities, weather, geopolitics, creditworthiness. There's so many moving parts. And, that really brought you to where you are today. And Bitcoin, which has many, many moving parts as well. You have the mining, the energy. There's so much there. So I need to ask you, before we dive into the energy, how did you come to Bitcoin? What was your aha moment when you came to Bitcoin and you embraced it?
Yeah, so I am proud to tell you that I came to Bitcoin because I was just greedy. I was looking for a way to maximize my portfolio and investigating all sorts of new technology. I subscribed to a magazine called the MIT Tech Review, and from 2010 to 2017, they published a list every year of the top 50 technologies. And so, I took these lists and I put them in a spreadsheet, and I started to look at them and say, okay, where are the similarities? Do I see trends here? Right? Who were the seed round investors? How much money did they raise? What was the, quote unquote tech? Was it social media, genomics, um, 3G or 5G, or like whatever it was? Kathy Wood talks a lot about, their areas of innovation. It was really looking at that, looking at the technologies from that perspective. It's like, okay, where's the innovation? What is really the undercurrent here? What's really happening? Don't get lost in the weeds over whether or not Snapchat works, right? That's not what's really working. That's not what's at play. And I came across this word blockchain, and I thought, wow, just kept coming up. If I buy blockchain, I will be rich. Like, how do I buy blockchain? And I typed that into Google, and I got all of, if you type in, how do I buy blockchain, you get all sorts of stuff. And I just started down trying to put the pieces together. I didn't know Bitcoin from Ethereum, from, any of the other garbage. But I did know that, okay, I was a trader. People actually paid me to day trade for a long time. Like, I can day trade crypto. And it's actually, I just think, really boring. It's really boring. It was meaningless. I didn't feel like I had found my purpose. I, kept on the learning journey. I found the kind of the famous Gary Gensler thing, maybe a year later, of him, educating the folks at MIT about, I'm trying to think of what it was. It was like something in money, or Bitcoin and money, or something was his class, but it was 24 classes long. So I'm listening to all of those on YouTube, and about episode 18 or 19, he goes into the ICO craze, and he says, like, whatever the percent was, I'll get it wrong, but like 90% of all of those ICOs were actually just white papers that went to market with not a single line of code written, right? It was just a marketing plan for like, oh, hey, like we think we can improve whatever it was, this form of decentralized finance. Like we're going to allow for XYZ to happen in a decentralized manner. And we're going to call this Lisa coin. And so it was whether or not I could go out and, you know, get people to make investments in my coin. But, you know, whatever the number was, 90% of those went to market and they had no code. And once I sort of figured out, like, none of these even have anything behind them, they're an idea. Um, I don't know. And then I think I found like Andres Antonopoulos, who's incredible, and just started, I don't know, I guess I just started talking about Bitcoin a whole lot. I started talking about it enough that someone said, you really should start a consulting practice and you need to teach people about Bitcoin. And so I did. Started a consulting practice, told people I was an expert in Bitcoin. I for sure was not. But I had some really great clients, two of which were energy companies, lots of wealth managers. And I just kept growing my own knowledge base, right? Just kept reading, kept talking to people. I went to all sorts of conferences. Eventually, I was at a conference and I met Parker Lewis at Unchained. I was at the Texas blockchain event and I met Parker, and he and I hit it off. And I don't know, 2 weeks later, a month later, I was working at Unchained Capital, helping people understand private key ownership and helping families onboard to Bitcoin and hold their own keys to Bitcoin and protect generational wealth. And when that happened, it was like, okay, this is my life's mission, right? Like my life's mission is to help people understand the difference between, I don't really spend a lot of time on the difference between Bitcoin and crypto because functionally I think it all goes to zero. But I do think that there's a few statements that there are objections or questions that people have that need to be answered, and people deserve an answer, right? It's very difficult. I cannot expect someone to come to Bitcoin in 10 minutes when it took me several years to come to Bitcoin fully. I'll stop there. I've been rambling.
I love it. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. Your journey sounds pretty profound, and I have to ask you to tell everyone, because you're a great educator, and a lot of people ask me the importance of holding your own Bitcoin. We're so used to living in this system that we're in, where we put our money in the bank and we rely on another party to store our money. But the importance of Bitcoin and holding your own keys. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yeah, well, again, I don't think that we can expect people to come to Bitcoin and immediately understand the importance of holding their own keys. What I see is very common. I mean, I guess two categories. I mean, my good friends go, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. Tell me how to do it. Tell me where to do it. Tell me what to do. Right? Okay, those people are ready to hold their own keys. But if it's someone who's hesitant or really wants to move slowly, then fine. Go to a firm like River Financial, Bitcoin only company that who can help you buy, and they will custody your Bitcoin. I think just naturally, when you're a Bitcoin owner, and even if you own it at an exchange or a company like River, and they have custody of Bitcoin, when you really understand that it is property, and you really understand that you are the best suited to protect your own property, right? There's no one with greater interest of you than you. So it is up to you to look out for yourself. It's not difficult to hold your own keys. Is it new? Yes. Is it more complicated than opening a checking account at the bank? Yes, but I mean, we do all sorts of things in the world that are complicated. Surgeons operate, mothers give birth to children, the whole gamut, right? Like we do lots of complicated things. It takes a little bit of effort, um, but everyone can hold their own keys. I certainly understand people make the point, my 80-year-old father doesn't need to hold his own keys. Okay, fine, right? There are Bitcoin companies that can help with that. Um, there's I won't name them all, but I mean there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of companies now that are Bitcoin only, Bitcoin focused, that can help you hold your own keys, or where they can help you distribute keys to people that can hold them on your behalf with no counterparty risk. And I think counterparty risk is really what we're trying to solve for, right? I don't want an exchange to go bankrupt and then my Bitcoin is trapped in a bankruptcy proceeding for the next 10 years, right? Like Mt. Gox. I mean, my gosh, those people are just now getting their Bitcoin back or their dollars back, whatever the case may be. So it's just about responsible ownership. And I don't know, maybe I'll stop there.
I love that. Responsible ownership. And yeah, absolutely. That counterparty risk is real. And we've heard a lot of stories of that in the news. So we don't want to be caught up in that. You being a risk management analyst, I'd like you to answer this question. I had Greg Foss on here, and he had said that Bitcoin is the best asymmetrical risk profile out there. It has the best one out there. What are your thoughts on that? And let's talk a little bit more about risk in Bitcoin. And I love how you were talking about the derivatives market as well.
So I have a good friend who's a I don't even know what to call him. He's not I guess he's a wealth manager. He's an advisor. He does really large pools of capital for people, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for folks. And, I think it's finally sunk in with him that Bitcoin is the only thing you can own that has no correlation to anything else. So just let that sit in, right? Like when Greg talks about it's an asymmetric bet, right? It is the only thing on earth that isn't connected to anything else. I mean, I guess we could say maybe gold has that same characteristic, but I don't know. I think there's research and there's people out there talking about, maybe gold is being manipulated by certain holders of gold. Why haven't we audited the Fort Knox since 1971 or something, right? There's been no formal, we're not making Fort Knox, the holdings of Fort Knox, publicly available. Why is that? Like, is there no gold there? So, Bitcoin is just disconnected from everything else. It's not, you don't have dollar denominated risk. And so, another objection I guess I get is, I would put Bitcoin in the tech bucket, and as a technology allocation, it's just too expensive. Well, it's not Apple, right? And it's not NVIDIA. It's not a technology in that sense. And I posted this on LinkedIn the other day. Don't take credit for it at all. But Bitcoin is gunpowder, right? It's a technology like gunpowder. No army said, well, we'll just keep using knives, right? Like everyone adopted gunpowder. It's the same with Bitcoin. It's only a matter of time. Everyone will adopt it. And I think what's so painful for people who are considering it, and the people who are considering it, I guess I'm speaking mostly to people that already hold assets, right? This very minute group of people in the world who actually own assets. I think they look at Bitcoin, and if they really understand it, they understand that Bitcoin dismantles entire industries, right? It dismantles what we think of financial services. It dismantles wealth management. It dismantles, um, everybody that was taking a piece of your dollar as you're trying to invest your dollar, right? And that's kind of the other thing I like to remind people is, you are going to work every day for a reason, right? You're not going to your job every day out of the goodness of your heart. You're going so that you get compensated. And then you're going to take that compensation and you may invest it. You may buy a car. You may, want to just own shoes. I mean, I don't know, but people are converting their own energy to something. Or I guess they're holding cash, right? In whatever your currency is. So we might be holding dollars in our bank account. I don't hold dollars in my bank account. I like to be like skating thin on dollars because I like for my money to be working for me, and by working for me, like I want it in Bitcoin. Um, Back to counterparty risk. If you own Apple, you have counterparty risk. You have management team risk. You have technology risk that the technology shifts. You have, um, all of the things that can go wrong when humans are involved. That's so, whether it's an equity, a bond, um, maybe fine art, but I mean, fine art, there's so many people involved in that process, whether it be marketing organizations. um, there's so many more diamonds that are in the world, and the supply is being held back to keep prices high. um, like you just, Bitcoin changes all of that. We don't need to take risks of counterparties or manipulation or currency risk anymore.
I love that. Yeah, it's always about risk. I always tell my clients and tell people it's always about the risk adjusted returns. And you have to always factor in that counterparty risk, and there's third party risk. There's so many other risks out there. And great point how Bitcoin eliminates that. It's always about supply and demand. And Bitcoin finite supply, 21 million, and it cannot be manipulated, incorruptible, immutable. Definitely powerful, amazing, the strongest money ever created. Just an amazing thing. I want to go into this adoption. You mentioned adoption. It's inevitable. I think many people seem to think that. I believe Millennium Management just invested billions of dollars into
Did.
Bitcoin.
I saw that.
Right? I saw that news. And so what are your thoughts on adoption, and is it inevitable?
Again, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but are you the army that doesn't adopt gunpowder? Right? Like, are you the wealth manager? I mean, maybe people do appreciate the fact that Vanguard has said no, they're not going to support their clients on the journey into Bitcoin. I don't know. Maybe that works for them. Maybe you are happy eking out a return that's just actually not even keeping up with what real inflation is. Okay, I'll give you another example, and then I'll try and circle back to your question. But so I'm with a wealth manager the other day, and he's talking to me about winning the business of a new client. And I said, well, can I see your presentation? Not specific to this client, but like, can I see what your portfolio looks like? And he said, oh yeah, sure. And he, pulls out this this kind of book about his firm. And in it, he has his own returns. And he said, I can't put my clients' returns in these things, but I use my own book to show what we're capable of, and I'm happy to explain these strategies to you. And he uses a lot of options, and he does a lot of trading. And I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was like a 1-year time period, a 3-year time period, a 5-year time period. And he had his returns versus the S&P versus, bonds versus whatever. And his was like 2% better. But his number, like for the 5-year was, I don't know, call it 2% better. Um, but if you look, like Lynn Alden points out, if you look at the broad money supply, the growth in the broad money supply, and you're at 40% in the last 5 years, and you're earning a 12% yield, like that dog doesn't hunt. Inflation isn't 4% or 8% or whatever, right? Like inflation is like a lot higher than that. Just ask anyone who's trying to go to the grocery store to buy anything. Coffee was just removed, I guess, from the inflation index. Um, you can't keep up by doing the same thing, right? Like the world has changed. We've now found the gunpowder of money. You're not going to be able to keep winning a fight with a knife. Everyone has to adopt this thing, or I think over time they go broke, right? Like if you, again, like this wealth manager I was speaking to who showed me his returns, I'm like, well, okay, um, but like this isn't even keeping up with inflation. I mean, leave the broad money supply argument alone, but like this isn't even keeping up with, the cost of everything else. And he literally said to me, well, but my clients aren't really sensitive to inflation. I was like, well, but that's not even true. I mean, you and I are at a restaurant and you just ordered a $90 piece of fish and complained about it. It was like, that's sensitivity to inflation, right? For a very high net worth person, like you're sensitive to inflation when you complain over a $90 piece of fish. Like, I'm sorry, that's what it is. He was like, oh, yeah. Like we all just need to be honest and go, wait, we need to dismantle these industries. Like they're breaking our country. There's no reason why financial services needs to be such a huge part of our GDP, right? It is massive. Like our GDP needs to be us making good things that help people, not skimming dollars out of every transaction of people that are trying to live their lives and go to work. That makes no sense. I mean, maybe it makes sense in a communist country or a socialist country, or I don't even know where that makes sense. Where does that make sense? It doesn't make sense here in America. It's not American in value. Um, so yeah, I think the whole world adopts Bitcoin, and these folks who are older who don't adopt, I mean, they'll be dead soon because they're still eating tons of food with seed oils, and they're dying of heart attacks at rapid rates, and it may not be obvious to them, but it's definitely obvious to the younger generation. There are a lot of people, a lot of young people who are in, high school and college and in their 20s who are figuring out Bitcoin. And they're not invested in Apple stock. They're never going to invest in Apple stock, right? Like they're going to own Bitcoin. It's the safest way for them um, to really start to build a life that maybe they saw I don't know who they saw live it, because I was going to say, young people could look at their grandparents, but there are so many people that are in the 70s, 80s, 60s, 70s, 80s who years old who are, living basically on their Medicare subsidy, which is kind of at the poverty line, right? Like that's not what we envision in our retirement, is to be poor. So we should be able to protect our own energy. If I go to work and get paid and I make an investment, I should trust that that investment grows over time and protects me more as time passes. And I'm certain that Bitcoin will do that. I am certain that Bitcoin continues to, provide security for me, more security every year. It may be a bumpy ride. I'm fine with that. Volatility is not risk. Risk is not volatility. That's a concept that's very widely misunderstood. I'm not sure that's the right word, but they're not synonyms. And I am certain that over time, my investment in Bitcoin will, provide for me.
Well, volatility is not risk. I'll start with that point. That those terms tend to be confused with each other. But I had Hoffa on here recently, Swan Bitcoin, the CIO. Excellent. I loved speaking with him. He said the same exact thing you were saying. And, he says that, there's volatility because it's still in the beginning. We're early with Bitcoin. This is still the beginning. Many people are confused also with that, saying, am I late to Bitcoin? Why, because it's not, $1,000, you think you're late, but I think that we have tremendous growth ahead with Bitcoin. If you look at the market cap, and that's a great way of looking at the potential for the growth of Bitcoin. And like you said, mass adoption, and we won't speak in absolutes, but it just seems 99.9% we'll use inevitable. We have, if you pull up the chart from Fred and you look at the purchasing power of the dollar, you'll see it's been on a steady decline since the 1950s. And it's just an accelerated, after COVID, all that massive money printing, more than double the money supply. And, they have massive fiscal spending now, massive public debt. I think we're over 35 trillion now, and interest expense over $1 trillion a year. And all, that's just going to further fuel inflation. And there's going to be more money printing. It's like a whole merry-go-round that's just going to cause more monetary destruction.
Yeah, exactly. And if I could go back, first of all, I love Hoffa.
Love him, right?
He's
great.
Incredibly bright. Yep. I encourage everyone listening to go look him up and study his work. To go back to Greg Foss for a second, one of the examples that he gave a long time ago, I think it's an excellent example. I think he's a little bit wrong, and I'll explain why, but I think he's generally on the right track. He gives the $900 trillion in total global assets example. So this answers, I think, hopefully this is meant to help shed light on the adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's $900 trillion of total global assets, that's many bonds, equities, fine art, collectible cars, commodities, right? It's everything. And again, I want to remind people that only a very small percentage of people own these $900 trillion of assets. But let's say that in those $900 trillion of assets, people take 5% of their invested dollars, and they move the 5% to Bitcoin. Well, 5% of 900 trillion is $45 trillion. $45 trillion divided by the supply of Bitcoin, 21 million, is $2.14 million of Bitcoin. So a 5% allocation simply from the existing asset base into Bitcoin potentially gets you to over $2 million of Bitcoin. Now, where I say that I disagree slightly with Foss, and I've told him this, and he and I are good friends, that's $900 trillion is just that small percentage of people that owns it. What about the woman in Cuba who can for the first time own property because she can own Bitcoin? What about the woman in North Korea who couldn't own property, but now she can own Bitcoin? Right? Like, it's probably going to be a significant, I mean, I don't know where hyperbitcoinization happens. It's not $70,000 where we are today, right? It's a number greater than 70,000. And so I think, again, like this is where Greg gets back to, pricing in risk. If Bitcoin today is $70,000 and we have the potential for this, huge market cap, like, aren't you willing to take that bet? Like even with 1% of your assets, right? I mean, 1% of the 900 trillion is what, like 2.14 million divided by 5? That's like more than $400,000 a coin. I don't know. Definitely a bet I'm willing to take. But, and then my kind of just to, and I'll close, or I'll just add this. You know, the other thing I think that we're not accounting for, is the movement by Russia, China, India out of US treasuries and into hard assets such as gold. I mean, they've publicly stated that they are, and we can see that they are reducing their exposure to US treasuries. And they've told us that they're buying gold. I would, if I were in Las Vegas, I would bet on the fact that Russia is mining Bitcoin, right? If there was like a way I could make that bet, I would. Any energy rich country who can should be mining Bitcoin, right? And if the US just decides that, you know, it's only for gangsters and druggies and they don't want it in the US, I mean, shame on us, because this is like global game theory of the highest order playing out.
Yep, global game theory. I like that term. It's true. It's almost like a Pascal's wager with Bitcoin. It seems that you have so much to lose, and the best asymmetric risk profile is Bitcoin. So very, very important points there. You know, I could go into the inflation, how the print is less than half of the true inflation. You can look at true inflation since COVID's in the 20s. It's all in how they calculate the CPI print, which is way underestimated. We all know that inflation's here and it's here to stay. Unfortunately, we have higher prices, new fees. It's so much, and it's still increasing even by their calculations by 0.3% month over month. But the shadow inflation, the alternative inflation, is more than double that. And we all know that when we go to the stores and we go shopping. So I want to dive right into our favorite topic here, Bitcoin mining, energy, the convergence of energy and Bitcoin. So I want you to tell us about this relationship between Bitcoin mining and energy, and how it can provide energy to these energy poverty places in the world. And also here in the United States, where we have many rolling blackouts, we have many high costs of energy usage, and we have a need for an alternative means like Bitcoin mining.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot there. I guess I could start just by giving a couple of examples so that maybe folks can conceptualize, you know, where Bitcoin mining might fit into the traditional energy landscape. But I would really encourage people to go watch Fred Thiel's discussion at the AIM Summit in London. It was just recently. It's late May in 2024. We're recording this. Like, I think it was just maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where he really talks about, you know, down the line, you know, I'm sure Fred said this, but like eventually your toaster is a Bitcoin miner, right? Every functional piece of equipment in a residence or a building will, you know, maybe perhaps could be mining Bitcoin. But let's just start with where we are today. There are power plants, there are companies who own generation assets today who pay the grid where their electricity flows to take excess power. Okay, again, that would be like Apple paying a consumer to take an iPhone, or paying a distributor to take an iPhone. Like, when is Apple going to pay a distributor to take an iPhone? Never. Yet we have power companies who pay to have excess power taken from them. That is no longer required. Because of Bitcoin mining, they can now you know, do a joint venture with a Bitcoin mining firm. They can mine Bitcoin on their own. You know, maybe they mine Bitcoin on their own, and they never hold on to any Bitcoin. They just sell it all, right? That's much better for them than them having to pay to have excess product taken. So we know that's happening. We know that Bitcoin mining is helping to mitigate methane. Huge narrative that's out there. It's absolutely true. Step in the right direction, I guess, towards reducing pollutants in the atmosphere. Although I'm a little jaded on that topic because I'm from Texas. And I know that in India or China, where they're building, one coal plant a week and they're emitting all of that, like when I look at a flare in Texas and I think of the globe overall, like, is it really making a difference? I don't know. Setting all that aside, we know that it's helping mitigate methane. But then there's all sorts of other places in the energy ecosystem where you can be mining Bitcoin to use waste energy. You can take, let's say that I heard this the other day, and I think this is like the coolest example. At a compressor station, right? So natural gas is coming out of a pipeline at a very high compressed state. So it's coming out of a pipeline into a compressor station, and it's decompressing, right? They're lowering the compression. Every time you have a compression change, when you lower the compression, you have a release of energy. That release of energy can be used to mine Bitcoin. Right? Like that is happening every day, all over the United States. Probably, I mean, I'm sure, all over anywhere there's pipelines and compressor stations. So think of the opportunity to capture unused energy at a site like that. We think about unused energy and we think about methane being released, or we may think about landfills that are releasing methane. Gas processing plants, same thing. You basically have a huge piece of infrastructure where gas is coming in, and gas has things in it, and you have to basically have all gas meet the same standard in order to be in a pipeline or to do certain functions, right? Certain generators, but it has to meet spec. So you have gas processing plants. Well, gas processing plants often, are connected to the grid, or maybe always they're connected to the grid. And let's say that there's one in particular in Texas that I know of that is evaluating Bitcoin mining. They're using 10% of the electricity that they can from the grid, right? So they have an agreement to buy power on a long-term basis with ERCOT or with whoever their energy provider is, but it's coming out of the ERCOT grid. They're using 10% of their capacity, right? Like, why not use 90% and monetize not only your capital that you've coordinated to build the processing plant, but use the energy that you have. And so, right now, if people look at natural gas prices on CNBC, that's reflective of the futures price, and that's location specific to Henry Hub, which is in Erath, Louisiana. So it's a physical location that's represented by a financial product. But prices vary in the United States, right? You can probably imagine price for natural gas is higher in the Northeast. You have a lot of transportation costs. You have less supply. Relies on a lot of things going right in order for gas to get up there. So let's just say, though, that natural gas prices at Henry Hub is what the processing plant is paying for the gas. So let's call that $2 for simple terms. Today, right, like your realized price, if you mine Bitcoin, if you take that gas and you turn it into energy and you power a generator and you make Bitcoin mining, right? You take natural gas from a pipeline. That gas gets transferred essentially into a generator. The generator powers shipping container or whatever whatever the housing looks like, full of Bitcoin mining machines. So you're taking the gas, you're making Bitcoin. Like, your realized price for your gas today is like $8 or $10. So am I going to, if I have natural gas, let's say I'm a landowner and I have natural gas, am I going to put it into a pipeline and earn $2? Or should I figure out how to coordinate capital or coordinate a joint venture with a Bitcoin mining company so that I can be mining Bitcoin and realizing $8 or $10? Right? There's huge opportunity for economic lift within energy companies. And they are evaluating these options. They are looking at them. They are now aware, which I think is hugely beneficial for the world. I forget what the second part of your question was. Did I answer your question?
You did. You did an excellent job of doing that. And we're going to go deeper into this. We know the benefits, like you mentioned, the methane gas that helps mitigate that and cut those emissions from landfills and farms by using that stranded gas. And also, it creates jobs, rural jobs, which is another important thing that I love to hear about because, people need jobs in these rural areas. And also reducing costs. And I always say it's good for the environment and your wallet. So it's reducing electricity costs. We're, like we said earlier, we're in a period of higher prices in secularly inflationary period. And so electricity costs are higher and they don't seem to be coming down. The delivery charges of electricity to my home are, I think, double than what they were just a few years ago. Even I think a year ago, it's been just going up consistently. So we want to reduce costs. So right there, you got, you win the argument because you're like, this is going to reduce costs and this is important and it affects everyone. And the rolling blackouts bring stability to handle these spikes that we have. I like to think of it as smooths out the electricity and doesn't waste electricity. We want to minimize waste. So there's so many benefits there. It's like a no-brainer to me. And where do you think we are on this trajectory of Bitcoin mining? And do you believe that the miners could be the future power companies?
That's such a good question. Okay, so I did remember the other part of your question before, which was how does this go hand in glove with improving or eliminating the energy poverty that is around the world. And I would say to folks, please Google gridless mining and just watch a short YouTube or a long YouTube, or read what they're working on in Africa. But they're basically turning, a river or a body of water into energy to run a generator, power a Bitcoin mining facility, and also build out energy infrastructure. And I was watching one of the co-founders recently. I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but he was saying that in this rural area where they have higher uptime now because of the Bitcoin mining operation than the major city that's 4 hours from them. So before, people had to move to the city to get more reliable access to power, right? And let us not forget that we can't study or go to class or have YouTube on without power, right? We can't cook without power. Our sanitation runs using power. So people were leaving remote villages or living without. And so now there's higher uptime, more power available in a remote village than in the city. That's incredible. And that's going to happen all over the world. That is beginning to happen in many places all over the world. Sorry, get me back on track.
Will the miners today be the power companies of tomorrow? Because I think that's an interesting concept.
It is a hugely interesting concept. Let me float this by you.
Mm-hmm.
This is so at the Houston Bitcoin meetup, which is the largest Bitcoin meetup in the world right now. Please, someone go build a bigger one. But we have a lot of energy folks that come, and obviously a lot of Bitcoiners and a lot of Bitcoin miners that show up. Sometimes there's a couple hundred people at these meetups, and it's incredible. A couple of years ago, people were saying, are the energy companies going to buy all the Bitcoin miners, or will the Bitcoin miners buy all the energy companies, right? Like, will Marathon buy Exxon, or does Exxon or Schlumberger buy Marathon? I don't know. I don't think that's the question right now. I don't think that's the question anymore. I think the miners play a really unique role because what they do is they assemble blocks, and thus they're in control of block space. And if we're going to tokenize every asset on Earth, and we know functionally, okay, this is my opinion, that Ethereum and all those other things are broken and never will work, that means that everything that's tokenized is going to need to work on Bitcoin, right? Those are going to have to be recorded on the Bitcoin blockchain, which is nothing more than a ledger, right? It's just a way of keeping track. And people love it. I love it. We love it because nobody can go in and erase a previous transaction, right? Like, if you did it, it's there forever. So if block space is valuable because everything becomes tokenized, and if everything's tokenized, it has to fit somewhere within a block. Like, I don't know, are the miners the new banks? Right? Is it the new stock exchange? Like, I don't know, but I don't think the argument is whether or not the energy companies buy the miners or the miners buy the energy company. I don't think that's where the conversation is. Now, all that to say, I wouldn't be surprised if Halliburton, oilfield service company, goes out and buys a bunch of Bitcoin miners because, like the Giga Energy guys or Steve Barber, Upstream Data, because Bitcoin mining can be, as my friend Joel Fulford, another Bitcoin miner, his company is 10 Net Zero. It's digital midstream. No longer, if I own natural gas, no longer do I have to be dependent on a pipeline so that I can sell my gas, right? And that's the situation people are in. If, let's say, I live in the middle of nowhere in Texas, and all of a sudden there's gas on my land and there's no pipeline, like, how am I monetizing that? You can't, right? You have to call a pipeline and then hope they build a line, and then the pipeline takes their pound of flesh when they take your gas away. Bitcoin mining is digital midstream. You call a Bitcoin mining person and say, hey, I have power. You're a Bitcoin miner. You know how to do this. Like, you can design a deal that is so advantageous for everyone, right? Maybe you're a landowner, you have gas, you just want to sell your gas. Fine, the Bitcoin miners buy your gas. Maybe you want to go 50-50 into a mining operation. You're going to put in the gas as part of your contribution. Maybe they bring some machines, or they bring the generator as part of theirs. Like, fine. Like, it's just an endless way for people to monetize assets and use energy, right? Use energy that is waiting to be used. And really, like, if it's in the ground, if it's gas, it's just economic value being, just waiting for the bus so that the value can be captured. So let's capture the value, right? Like, let's make humanity rich, not in the sense of lots of money, but like, let's make sure everybody has access to energy. Let's make sure everybody can monetize, every molecule of energy that's in the ground, that people are, operating to their highest calling, right? Like, not to go down the philosophical rabbit hole, but longevity and happiness is all derived from living with purpose and living with community. So, like, let's fight for things that fill us with purpose and that enable us to live healthy lives, healthy, long lives.
We have to dabble a little bit in the philosophy there because Bitcoin is philosophy. When I had Michael Saylor on, we talked about what is money? What's the philosophy of Bitcoin? And it's to do good. We're on this planet for a reason. And, it's not to take from others, but it's to give. And by giving to others, we can all elevate together. And we have a collective consciousness. And we're here, people are happy. They do good. It's like it spreads. And so it's important to do what's right. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's to help bring power to people who don't have it. It's to provide property ownership to people who don't have the capability of having that. And these unstable currencies in other countries, people don't have a means of having a stable currency. So it provides so much. And I think it's sometimes difficult for people to understand because we've lived in this fiat world where money's being taken from us. And I had Jeff Booth on too. So grateful that you, Lisa, all of you are amazing. And we're all in this together. And I always like to say that we all are just, sharing our knowledge to help others. And, like Jeff Booth talked about how we are thinking in this world, how we should really think in the Bitcoin universe. And there's just it's an abundance. And there's so much abundance. And this Bitcoin mining represents that and that abundance with this energy. So, Lisa, if you can enlighten us and tell our people how businesses and people can integrate Bitcoin mining into their operations and benefit others. Is it really that simple or is it complicated? How is it? How can they do that?
So I am no expert on setting up a home mine, but there are a lot of resources out there. Maybe you can link to some in your show notes. I don't mine. I live in a high rise. There's nowhere for the heat to go. I really would like to plug in an S9 just so I can kind of see it work. But I think people can opt in without mining, right? Like just opt into Bitcoin, because if you're choosing fiat and if you're choosing fiat denominated assets, you're opting in to bad, deceptive decision-making practices. It's not about like us, wanting to preach the gospel, right? We've now realized that there's a better way, and we just want everyone to know that there's a better way. You're still free to make your own decision, right? If you just still think Apple is the best stock on earth, or Nvidia, or enter equity of your choosing, okay, but you should be informed about Bitcoin. And I think it is not I don't believe in coincidences, but it is not a coincidence that people who know the most about Bitcoin are the happiest, have stable families, are very focused on their own health, right? Whether that be physical health, their mental, like their mental wellness, right? Like all of those things are very closely linked together. And, if you are, if you're 50 and if you work for an investment bank and the price of everything's going higher, and maybe you've got two kids that are in college and college is crazy expensive, and your kids are graduating and they're not getting great jobs, right? They're graduating. I mean, maybe the few and far between are getting great jobs, but the majority are not. So you're that 50-year-old and you've basically saved nothing because you've raised a family, you've bought a house, you've done all the things that our society says you should be doing. You've joined a country club, you have two cars, you go on vacation, like all of this socialized idea of what we should be. if you've done all of that and you're still not happy and you're sitting there going, I'm never going to be able to retire. I have no security. I feel I have no sense of safety for my retirement, right? I hope I'm dead by the time, I'm 70 because I won't have enough money to live past 70, right? That is a very real situation right now. Bitcoin totally changes that. I know 100% Bitcoin fixes that. I mean, that I have always had a fear that I would wind up living under a bridge, like a very real fear. Ever since I figured out Bitcoin, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't need that MBA after all. I'm glad I didn't go get it. I wasn't interested in the slightest in getting it. Um, I don't need to go work at a financial services firm. I don't need to, do all these things that are socially acceptable. I listened to Robert Breedlove last night, or 2 nights ago with Seb Bunny. Like, Seb is an expert in mountain biking, and now he's written an incredible book that's super simplistic. Just, everyone can understand it to explain Bitcoin. Like, and he's still riding his bike and doing all the things he wants to do. Um, like, Bitcoin lets us pursue all these other interests besides feeding the GDP monster that is the financial services of the world, right? It lets us go plant dahlias and play with our kids, and I don't know, like, name like your number one hobby, whatever that is, or what the hobby that you've always wanted to do, but you haven't had the time to do it. Like, if we quit spending time in front of our computers on the, you know, TD Ameritrade app, looking at charts, trying to figure out how to save, how to make money for our retirement, like, we could be doing a lot of other things that are much more valuable to humanity.
Yes, more fulfilling. And that's where true happiness
Definitely.
comes. Excellent points
Definitely.
there. And I'm so happy you went this route, Lisa, and brought up these important points because yes, people I think are working themselves to death and they don't even know what their hobbies are. And it's unfortunate because we're here to live our lives and enjoy our lives and to do good instead of just being a slave and just being like a little rat in a cage that just goes and constantly has to be glued to the computer or always working and with no enjoyment and no savings for the future. And Bitcoin changes that and gives us hope. And it's about a holistic approach I always talk about to life, and it's about your mind. Your mindset is everything. And if we're not happy or we're not feeling fulfilled, we become in a negative state, and then everything else becomes negative as well. So we need to have a positive mindset and take everything, every part of our lives is all interrelated. What we eat, you mentioned food, it's important to have healthy food. We need to have access to that. And Bitcoin helps provide all of that, the potential to have access to all these things. So thank you so much, Lisa. You are just so enlightening with so many points. And I love your humility. You're so humble as well, but you're very knowledgeable. And I appreciate you sharing all this with us today. Could you please tell our people how they can find you and find out more about these topics?
I'd be delighted. Thanks. Thank you for having me. And you're a wonderful host. I really enjoy your show myself. So thank you. Um, you can find me on Twitter or you can find me on LinkedIn. And I will say, if you message me, I do try to get back, and I think I do get back to everyone that reaches out. So if I can be helpful to you or connect you in some way to Bitcoin or to the Bitcoin community, it would be my sincere privilege to do so. So please feel free to reach out. We've named a whole bunch of great resources on here today. I mean, Jeff Booth and Foss and obviously Saylor. He's amazing. But I would
Lynn
just say,
Alden too, that Broken Money
oh,
book. Oh,
yeah,
she's
no,
amazing. I had her on the show. I was so fortunate about a month ago, a little bit over a month. Great stuff.
yeah, definitely. So I would say just get involved. Like, it will be the best investment of your time. Like, if you're not ready to buy Bitcoin, totally fine, but do invest, 2 hours next month or this month and go to a Bitcoin meetup in your area. If there isn't one, start one.
I love that.
Especially if you're young, start one. Start one in your community.
Just like your daughter, who's amazing. Please tell us about Elle. I want everyone to know about Elle Hough. She's amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, she's a workhorse. So Ellis started let me back up. She's a junior in college. Actually, she just finished her junior year. She got home 2 nights ago. So she's home for just briefly, for like 10 minutes. But she spent 15 months lobbying her university to allow her to study Bitcoin as her major in her degree program. And after many, many no's, it was approved this year in January. On the heels of that, she started a Bitcoin club at her university and launched with a co-founder, Arsh Malou. They launched the Bitcoin Students Network. And the Bitcoin Students Network is basically an open source guide or a cheat code to starting a Bitcoin club at a university. All the materials that you need, the support that you need, I think funding if you need it to get your club off the ground. So I would definitely look up the Bitcoin Students Network. Their board of advisors is incredible. Jeff Booth is on their board. Martel Fox, Michael Riani, who's the Bitcoin guy at Square. For those that don't know it, he's also the person that convinced Elon Musk to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet at Tesla. So she and Arsh have an incredible board of advisors at the Bitcoin Students Network, and I think they're in maybe, I always get this wrong, like call it a dozen, maybe it's 20 places all around the world already. So I think that's the way. That's what gives me the most hope, is that, forget the Janet Yellens of the world. I don't really care if she ever figures it out. I really don't. Like, I don't care if Jamie Dimon goes to his grave and he hates Bitcoin. That's just, it's a lie. I mean, his JP Morgan has raised money for at least one of the big mining company, one of the public mining companies that I know. I'm sure others, they're involved obviously in the ETFs, but whatever. If that's what he wants to be remembered for, is hating Bitcoin, then by all means, please do. But the younger generation doesn't need the shenanigans, and they don't need the misaligned incentives, and they're not willing to. They don't buy it. I don't know why like our generation bought it, but the 20-year-olds today just don't buy it. They don't believe it. So good for them. Go Bitcoin.
Right. It's about the future. Well said. And we're going to be keeping our eyes out for Elle. She's an amazing, never gives up, and a woman with a purpose. And and obviously runs in the family. So thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Rosanna. I enjoyed it. You're amazing.
Thank you. So are
Keep
you.
doing it. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.